Initiation by Elisabeth Haich, Chapter 24, Sons of God. The next day, the Pharaoh summons me. I am to see him after his audience. At the appointed hour, the controller of the royal household comes and escorts me to father. "Come, my child," says he. "I want to tell you what Ptahhotep and I have agreed upon about your initiation." "Did he come to see you?" "No," says father, and he looks at me quizzically. "Did you go to see him?" I ask again. "No," again, he answers and smiles. "Father," I tell him, "for a long time I've wanted to ask you how you discuss things with Ptahhotep without going to see him, or his coming to see you. I've often noticed that you've told me something about him as if the two of you had been together in a long consultation, and yet you had not left the palace, and he had not come to see you. How is it possible, Father?" Ever since my childhood, Father has been accustomed to my questions, and he now answers me as patiently as ever. "You have a mirror, and you have seen your head in this mirror, haven't you?" "Yes, Father, I see my head every day when Manu does my hair." "And what have you noticed?" asked Father. "That I have a much longer head than the sons of men in general, but you two and Ptahhotep and most of the people in our race, the sons of God as people call us, have the same longer head form. It's noticeable, even in spite of the kerchief or the headgear or ornaments that the person might be wearing. How is it, Father? Why is the shape of our heads different from that of the heads of the sons of men?" "Look, my child, for you to understand many things of the earth, here on earth, you must first know something about the earth's development. Just like all the celestial bodies in the universe, and like all the forms of life on these celestial bodies, our earth is subject to the laws of constant change. The divinely creative forces radiate from the eternal, infinite, original source, and in constantly expanding waves, they penetrate the planes of matter. That is to say, matter is formed from these forces. This process reaches the highest point in ultramatter, then automatically reverses itself. The process of spiritualization begins again, and the matter is transformed into force. But this process takes eons of time. The changes are going on regularly, but so subtly and slowly that they cannot be noticed or observed in the course of a human life. On the other hand, some changes, which require thousands of years of slow, unnoticed preparation, occur suddenly and visibly when the proper time has come. Right now, we're living in such a period of transition in which changes are noticeable. One of these phenomena is evident in the fact that various races of people with roundish skulls are led and governed by rulers who are spiritually greatly superior to them, and who are even different from them physically. They have a more graceful figure and an elongated cranium. Once there lived on earth a race of people very different from the races living today. They manifested completely the law of spirit and not the law of matter like the races of people living here today. These people were conscious on the divine plane and manifested God here on earth without any admixture of the self-seeking characteristics of the body. In their divine purity, these people deserved the name the sons of God. Their entire life was based on spirituality, love, and selflessness, and they had no physical appetites, urges, and passions to cast shadows on the spirit. The members of this high race possessed all the secrets of nature, as they were perfectly acquainted with their own powers and kept these powers completely under control of the spirit. They were also able to control and guide nature with all its tremendous forces. Their knowledge was boundless. They did not need to earn their bread with physical toil, and instead of earning their livelihoods with the sweat of their brow, they put the forces of nature to work. They knew all the laws of nature, the mysteries of matter, the powers of the mind, and the secrets of their own being. They also knew the secret connected with the transformation of force into matter and of matter into force. They constructed devices and tools which they could store up, set in motion, and utilize not only the forces of nature, but also their own spiritual forces. They lived happily and peaceably as the dominant race in a great part of the earth. At the same time, however, other creatures, similar to the sons of God, were also living on earth, but with much more material bodies and on a much lower plane of development. Obtuse in spirit, their consciousness was completely identified with the body. They lived in primeval jungles, struggling with nature, each other, and animals. These creatures were the ancestors of present-day man. The race of the sons of men you see in our country represent a cross between these two races. As I said a moment ago, the law of constant motion and change is at work throughout the universe. The earth is now going through a period in which the process of materialization is advancing. This means that the divinely creative power is moving farther and farther on into matter, and the power on earth is gradually falling more and more into the hands of ever more material races of people who were once under the guidance of higher, more spiritual races. Little by little, little by little, the higher race is dying out. They are withdrawing from the plane of matter to the spiritual plane, and they will leave humanity alone for a period of time, as time is reckoned on earth, many, many thousands of years, so that humanity may, without visible guidance, climb upward with its own power. And so it has come about that this animal-like material race of cavemen is experimenting in accordance with divine laws, growing mightier and more powerful until the time comes for it to begin ruling the earth. Before leaving the earth, however, the higher race has to implant its special powers in the lower race. Through the operation of the laws of heredity, this will enable the lower race, after a long, long process of development, to arise out of matter again. This is why many sons of the divine race made the great sacrifice of begetting children with daughters of primitive man. Through this first crossing of the races, they have developed new individual types and gradually new races of people. The divine power of the sons of God and the mighty physical powers of the daughters of men have produced different types of descendants. On the one hand, physical, and on the other, spiritual giants. There have also been physical titans who, from their mother's ancestry, have inherited primitive, undeveloped brains. In these persons, the spiritual power of their fathers, working on the material plane, created tremendously strong bodies. With their gigantic physical strength, these individuals have overcome weaker persons, and because of the animal appetites of their nature, they have become tyrants, greatly to be feared. But there have also been spiritual titans who have manifested their inherited creative power through the higher centers of the brain rather than the lower physical plane. These spiritual giants were assigned the task of leading and teaching for a time the lower animal-like body-conscious race of humans, as well as the hybrid race, which later rose through the interbreeding I have already mentioned. These spiritual giants have the task of teaching people of these two races, wisdom, sciences, and arts, as the basis of a higher civilization, and of giving them a good example of divinely use of universal law, unselfishness, and spiritual greatness. That is why there are some countries today where despotism and tyranny are dominant, while others are ruled with love and wisdom. This will gradually disappear, and humanity will know the great initiates and their secret sciences only through historical records, tradition, and legend. However, even in the darkest period of human development, by virtue of the laws of heredity, there will be the possibility that a son of God may be born in a human body in order to show humanity the way out of darkness and misery. Father, I ask, is our country the country of the Son of Gods? No. Is our country the country of the sons of God? No, my child. The continent which was once the home of the sons of God has been completely destroyed. Gradually there were fewer and fewer descendants of the divine race. They left their mortal frames behind them, and they did not reincarnate themselves. Finally, there were only left a few in various parts of the earth to transmit dominion to the human beings who were constantly growing in power. Because of the interbreeding of the two races, however, there arose some individuals with the knowledge of magic acquired from their fathers and the animal-like, physically oriented selfishness of their mothers. These were able to infiltrate into the temple, and by virtue of their spiritual powers, they received initiation. However, they degraded their knowledge to black magic and made selfish use of their own powers and the natural forces they controlled with the instruments and equipment of the temple. The sons of God, who were then still living in this part of the earth, saw what was coming. They knew that these powers mercilessly destroy anyone who uses them wrongly, that is, with satanic selfishness instead of with divine unselfishness. They knew the black magicians were headed straight for perdition, and their blind avarice would cause general destruction. So the last sons of God built huge ships, closed on all sides and even insulated against the forces which penetrate and dissolve matter. Then they secretly took aboard a few of their instruments, their families, and their domestic animals, and, closing all openings, they sailed away from the part of the earth that was to be destroyed. Some sailed north, some east, some south, while some, sailing westward, arrived here where we are now. The black magicians soon lost control over their instruments. It should have been their task to conduct the highest cosmic divine forces into these instruments and store them in there, because the only source of this power on earth is the human being himself. But the more selfish these people became, the more a change took place in the current with which they charged these instruments for later use. One day, when the sons of God in their insulated ships had already sailed away to a sufficient distance, the tragedy occurred. One of the black magicians unintentionally conducted into his own body a force which dissolves matter, that is, changes it into another form of energy. When this process has once been set in motion, the matter which has been transformed into energy goes on and on, acting as a destructive force until it has dematerialized everything. In this way, the whole continent was destroyed. Finally, the new forces thus created slowed down and eventually halted the process of disintegration. The entire dematerialized continent was transformed into energy of radiation, at first rising up to the upper reaches of the Earth's atmosphere and then returning, transformed into the primordial form of all matter. After further transformation processes, The whole gigantic mass fell to earth again in what appeared to be an unending downpour of water, mud, and sand. The waters of the ocean rolled over the gigantic cleavage in the body of the earth. The land masses of the other hemisphere, split asunder by the cataclysm shake-up, moved farther and farther apart in order to restore equilibrium throughout the earth until they finally occupied their present positions. Part of the destroyed continent now lies in our country as a mighty desert of sand, and there is a danger that winds may carry abroad these mountains of sand and cover up fertile inhabited areas. The sons of God in their ships had special instruments and equipment to stabilize their vessels and to keep them horizontal at all times. Thus they survived the catastrophes and finally landed. In every part of the earth where they set foot, they began a new civilization. With their knowledge, wisdom, and love, they won the hearts of the natives. They became rulers. They were worshipped, revered as gods or demigods. Their first acts were to construct suitable buildings for their secret instruments in order to insulate them completely from the world outside and provide adequate protection against the powerful penetrating energy stored up in their instruments. These buildings, which we call pyramids, can now be seen in the various parts of the world where the sons of God fled with the instruments they salvaged. Profoundly impressed, I listened to the story of these tremendous events. It cleared up many things I had not understood before, but not everything. How did the sons of God bring these mighty blocks of stone and set them in place, one upon the other? I asked. Do you remember, my child, the Pharaoh replied, that I told you the sons of God did not need to work with physical force because they caused the forces of nature to work for them? We still possess some of these instruments with which we can control the gravitational force of the earth at will, neutralizing it or amplifying it depending on the result we wish to achieve. In this way, we can make an object weightless, or inversely even heavier than it normally is. When a huge block of stone has been made weightless, in this way even a child can push it about with its little finger or raise it to any desired height. Ships were piled high with these gigantic blocks of stone without being overloaded because the blocks had been subjected in advance to the proper form of radiation and so made weightless. All the gigantic edifices here and in other parts of the world which human power never would be able to build were erected by the sons of God in this way. Wherever the sons of God disembarked from their ships, they created a high civilization. Wherever they are still ruling, they are leading the people in unselfish love and making a sacrifice for their benefit, the sacrifice of remaining here on earth and for a time in order to teach them and propagate spiritual powers. There was once a time when the ruler, the Pharaoh, was simultaneously the high priest. In one and the same person, he was the earthly and spiritual leader of the people. Later, however, as the country grew greater through culture and wealth, the sons of God divided up the tasks, and ever since then, one of them has fulfilled the duties of worldly government, while the eldest, the leader of the race, has been the spiritual leader of the people. The Pharaoh rules the country. The high priest fulfills his duties in the temple. He is the guardian of the knowledge in every field, since all knowledge comes from a single source. It is he who gives the initiation into the sciences, into the arts, and also the great initiation in the temple into the artless art of the spirit. Now you know why these people are ruling and teaching have differently shaped heads, from those of the descendants of the sons of God who are now the reigning family. Those of us who have this elongated skull make relatively little use of our intellects because we are able to experience truth directly with our inner sight. Our forehead is not heavily arched because in our heads the brain centers having to do with the power of thinking are only developed to the point necessary for us to perceive and consciously experience external impressions. On the contrary, in the rear part of the cranium we possess fully developed brain centers, the physical instruments of spiritual revelation. These brain centers enable us to be conscious of the divine plane and to give those superior qualities and characteristics which distinguish us from the sons of men. Human beings, in their consciousness, live in time and space. We, although we too inhabit earthly bodies, enjoy the perfect spiritual freedom in freedom from time and space. Through the power of the divine consciousness and with the help of these brain centers, we are able to move freely in time and space. This means that we're able to shift our consciousness into the past or into the future at will. In other words, we're able to experience the past and the future as present, and with the same ease, we can free ourselves from the hindrance of space and move our consciousness to any place we wish. In this condition, there is no here and no there, but only omnipresence. For past and future, here and there, are only different aspects, different projections of the one and only reality, the eternal, omnipresent being, God. The blood of both races is flowing in your veins. You inherited characteristics of our race, but also the hybrid race from your mother's side. In you, the higher organs are beginning to function. Unfortunately, much too early for you to have had time for earthly experiences, or for you to have conquered your partially earthly nature. You are unsatisfied because you feel imprisoned in time and space, caught between here and there. The spirit within you is beginning to awaken and long for its divine freedom. You have asked 3 times to be initiated, and you will be. Then you will learn to make conscious use of the higher organs which are not yet fully active within yourself. You will also acquire the ability to establish contact at any time with similar beings in order to be able to exchange thoughts with them. I am thus able to establish spiritual connection at any time with my brother Ptahhotep and any of the other descendants of the race of the sons of God still living on earth. Through a complete union of our consciousnesses, we are able to exchange our thoughts on any given subject, much better than if we were talking together on the earthly plane with the help of larynx, tongue, and ears. With our consciousness, we can seek each other out at any time, but we feel immediately if the other is occupied and concentrating on something else. In such a case, we disturb each other only if we have something very important to communicate, otherwise we withdraw. But you can easily understand why only persons who have achieved perfect unselfishness can have such abilities. If self-centered sons of men also had them, they would create such chaos that all the finer, higher organs would be ruined in the general confusion. For the most part, we meet in quotes, through uniting our consciousnesses in this way. In the evening after the daily duties are done, and in this union, we see each other's thoughts. Thus, in a matter of moments, we're able to agree on things which would take long discussions in the 3-dimensional world. After we have thought over our worldly tasks, we shift over into our consciousness, into the dimensionless state of all consciousness in order to draw new vital energy from the eternal divine original source. In this condition, we are one with all living creatures, with the entire universe, identical with it in the divine primordial union, one with life itself, with the eternal being, hence the essence of every manifestation, with you too, and with all people. Only these beings who, with their consciousness, are still living in 3 dimensions are not aware of this union. On the other hand, every living creature awakens from sleep with renewed vital energy, whether or not it knows that this energy comes from the divine original source. And so you're going to be initiated. This means that you are starting on a long, long journey. You will have to travel this path on earth, even after Ptahhotep and I have left the 3-dimensional world, and only remain in spirit in the sphere of the earth. I have different tasks from Ptahhotep. Your spiritual and intellectual guidance is in his hands. In the eternal union, however, we will always be together. It would have been better if you had had more patience, but you are as you are, and the way you are will also determine your fate and your future. We cannot interfere. The power which comes from union will always accompany you and help you through the most difficult times. Since you have the duty of representing the wife of the Pharaoh beside me, and you will not be able to dwell in the temple as other neophytes do during the period of preparation for initiation. You will go there every morning for instruction, and when evening comes you will return to the palace. At palace ceremonies, you will come in time to fulfill your duties at my side, so you can report to Ptahhotep tomorrow morning. But I still have a question or so remaining. Father looks at me quizzically. Father, I ask, you've told me that the sons of God, in order to propagate their spiritual powers, took wives from among the daughters of men. Didn't the daughters of the sons of God also take husbands from among the sons of men? Why have only the sons of God begotten children with the daughters of men, and not the daughters of God too with the sons of men? Father looked deep into my eyes and said, engrave this answer of mine upon the tablets of your memory. If you understand this truth really well, we may perhaps be able to set the rudder of your fate on a different course. If you pour out a drop from a glass of red wine into a glass of white wine, the red wine in the glass remains pure red wine as it was before. The white wine is no longer pure white wine, but a mixture of both. And if you then pour out some of the white wine, what you pour out is actually a mixture of red and white wine. Do you understand, my child? Yes, Father, I understand. You mean that the blood of the purebred Son of God will still remain pure if he begets children with a daughter of the sons of men. But the blood of the purebred daughter of God would become mixed blood if she were to marry one of the sons of men. From then on, she would be mixed, and so would her children. Remember this truth every moment of your life, says Father, and then he arises. I bow before him, and he blesses me, preserving the unity of the soul in my heart. I leave the room.